Hello everyone, welcome back to another FEBuilder tutorial. My name is XPGamesNL and today we're covering, as you may have read in the title, unit palettes. Now, last Fire Emblem Builder tutorial we covered how to create your custom character, and I totally forgot to add in the part of unit palettes. And I've also gotten a comment on that video explaining to me like, yo, could you do that in this video? Could you show us how to import and make palettes? And it was like, sure, I'll cover that next. So for this video I'm going to show you how to import make palettes, and for the people who do not really understand what I'm talking about, you know that in like in FEGBA, in Fire Emblem 6, 7, and 8, every single character has a unique color when entering battle. For an example, if you take Oswin, the armor knight from Fire Emblem 7, Oswin's portrait, in Oswin's portrait you can see that he wears orange armor, and his battle animation reflects that. That is because of his palette. His palette is said to be an orange armor knight, and so for, like, if we go to Franz real quick, Franz in his portrait has orange, or no, that's green. Has green armor, and in his battle animation he also has green armor and blonde hair, which is also seen in his portrait. So what a palette does is it just changes the color of a generic animation into the color of the character. For this video I have imported one of my my custom characters. This is Mace, also a character featured in my Fire Emblem Rom hack. I've imported Mace, and I'm going to create a palette for the character that would be Ross. You can still see that the name hasn't changed over here, but this character would be Ross. Now, for the trainee characters and for the main lords, there's something interesting, because Erica and Ross, Amelia, and Ewan, oh, and Ephraim as well. Where's Ephraim? Oh, over here. They don't have a palette themselves. They don't have a palette. That is because the color of their battle animation is their palette, because there is only one journeyman in the game, that is Ross. There's only one Erica Lord, there's only one Ephraim Lord, there's only one Amelia trainee, there's only one Ewan trainee. So there is no need to actually get a palette for that, seeing as they're the only ones with that class. And that is why there is no palette for these guys. Now, there are two reasons for why I'm creating a palette for Ross this episode. One is because Ross doesn't have one, so we can start we can build it from the ground up. There's nothing set for Ross yet, so I can show you how to create a new palette and how to do that. And second of all, I wanted to show you that it's actually possible to make a palette for characters that have a unique class. For if people don't know that that's possible, then I'll show you it is. And I really wanted to show you guys that you can actually, also with a little bit of careful planning, and if you want to, you can actually change the palettes of the generic soldiers too. But there's a little bit of a tricky bit in changing the palette of the regular soldiers, of the generic enemy soldiers. I'll come to that in a couple of seconds, or after we finished making Ross, or Mace in this case, in his portrait. So, or palette, I mean. Sorry. So Mace is a journeyman and the replacement of Ross. Now, there's this really nice button over here that says Jump to Unit Palette. This is a really nice shortcut of FEBuilder. So we're gonna click on that. Then I gotta get the right window. It should be this one. There you go. So when you click on that, what I just clicked on, if you click on that, what happens is you get over here. You get to this nice little screen, and as you can see, there are a lot of there's a lot of stuff going on here. Now, you see that Ross has like 7 different palettes. That is because Ross can become 7 different classes. the trainee can promote into either a fighter or a pirate, and a pirate has 2 promotions and a fighter has 2 promotions. It's pretty weird how they did this. There are 2 warriors over here. For as far as I'm aware, you only have to set 1. But standard Fire Emblem 8 has set both of these. Isn't really necessary, but it's nice that they did that. So we get a little bit more of an overview. So you can see that Ross has like, how much? I think he has like 4 or 5 unique palettes. It's 5. Now you can see that all these palettes are also, if you look over here, they're all tied to a class. For an example, the palette with 0, which is just the standard, which is no palette at all, corresponds with the Journeyman class. The 1F palette corresponds with the Fighter class, the Pirate with the 11, the Hero with 42, 64 for the Warrior, and 14 for the Berserker. Now, you could change these. For an example, if I want Ross' base class to be different, I can change this to, you know, whatever I want. This is changing the palette, so you can change a palette. This is O'Neill's palette, and let's see if I can recognize another palette. Well, this is Ewan's palette. You can change that. That is changing the palette. So if you make a palette for a character that doesn't correspond with the class, you can change the palette, or you could change the class. Like over here, now we're changing the class of the palette. Which, you know what's fun? It's that the Brigand and the Fighter sort of have the same palette. The same colors are at the same place. Like for an example, the Fighter over here has like the same colors as the Brigand, and it still works. The Brigand palette will work with a Fighter, and the Fighter with a Brigand. That's pretty interesting. But you can change the class, and you can change the palette over here. So we could also make a O'Neill-like Brigand. But for now, we'll just stick to... Oh, hey, hi, Garcia. We'll stick to the palette of... to these. We're not going to change anything here. We're going to go to this palette over here, palette 0. We're going to make a whole new one for Ross, because we want a custom palette for Ross or just Mace. Because Mace, in the portrait, Mace has a sort of gray color, and here it's blue, so we need to change that. So when we go to... Let me quickly look... Where is it? I think it's over... Where is it now? Is it over here? Yeah, it's over here. So this is the menu you end up when you click a palette number. So when... Let me quickly go back. When you click on that 0, or on the trainee class, trainees only, if you click on any of these, you will end up in this little menu. And the thing is, since it's number 0, there's no palette for number 0. You see, it starts at 0, 1. Starts at 1. There's no 0. So that means that FEBuilder's like, wait, where do we go? Because there's no 0. FEBuilder doesn't know where to go. So if I go back to the class thingy, like so, if I click on an existing palette, like 42, then FEBuilder's like, oh yeah, here you go. Then, hold on. That's where it is stored. It's like, oh yeah, it's stored over here. Look. But we wanted to go back to number 0. No, I said back to number 0, please. Alright, it doesn't really help much, because FEBuilder, once you have clicked on an existing palette, FEBuilder's like, no. So, we don't have a palette yet for the new... We have to make a new palette. A new palette for Mace. So, if you ever in FEBuilder see this extend list option, what it does is it just creates free space, a free slot for you to put a character or just put information, put data. How am I going to explain this? When you press this extend list button, you can't see it over here, but it asks you to allocate new data. The standard amount of pallets in FE8 is 108. You can see that with count over here. It's 108. You should change that to 109 so we can add one extra pallet. And as you can see, something happened in this little list here. There's nothing here. This is a free slot where we can put a new pallet. So let's click this button, new pallet assignment. It asks us to allocate new pallets, yes, and then we have allocated space, and so as you can see, a new pallet is created. This is really just the slot we're going to put the pallet in. This is not, we're going to leave this for now, because now we're going to the creating palette aspect. We're gonna make one, like, as in recoloring and shit. So, let's grab a second program called Usenti. Usenti is a really neat program for recoloring stuff. As you can see, I have the palette of mace really small on the bottom here. That is because it isn't really that important to have mace up. It's only for taking colors and adding them to the palette. So mace is chilling down over there. But before we're going to recolor, we need a file to recolor, of course. So let's go back to FEBuilder. And let's go to... where is it? Over here. If we could close the Usenti real quick so everyone can look. We're going back to the character creator. Now we're going to click on support class and it will bring you to the class menu. So if I can get the class menu real quick. There you go. This is the class menu. Now, when I create custom palettes for my characters, I usually do this. So this is the class menu. We're going to click on this button over here that says animation pointer. And that will bring us to the animation segment of FEBuilder. The animation segment of FEBuilder, we're not going to go, we'll cover that in a different episode when we go make custom classes and stuff. For now, let's just press this little button here that says generic color. What happens when you press this button is, hold on a second. Oh, what's happening? There you go. You get this nice little window that shows us the generic color for a battle animation. It's, how do I explain this? Every single animation in Fire Emblem Game Boy Advance has a standard color palette, and you can find that here. For an example, an enemy journeyman without a palette would look like this. A green unit journeyman without a palette would look like this, and a gray one would look like this. This is a sort of vanilla palette, also for enemies. If I ever make custom palettes, I like to export this image and recolor that image in Usenti, because this is the standard version of the palette. So we're going to export this image to, like, gotta give it a name. Hang on. So we exported this, and now what we're going to do is, since we've exported this little thing over here, we're going to open it up in Usenti. So let's go back to Usenti. So if we could go back to Usenti, that would be awesome. Right. I'm going to close everything in the background real quick. So, like that. So, we're now back in Usenti, and as you know, Usenti is the program I use for recoloring like sprites and stuff. So we're going to open that little generic palette we exported. We're going to open it up in Usenti, and boom, there it is. This program is pretty easy to find, by the way. You just go Google it, and it just shows up. So now we have this little palette over here. So the next step is to just go to the other Usenti, get this little pipette tool, and press the color you want. Now we're first going to recolor the bandana of Ross, like this one over here. We're going to recolor this color. And that is really nice about Usenti. When you change, like, show you real quick. When you change this color, every single instance that has this color changes too. And that's really nice, since otherwise you had to recolor every single pixel one by one, but Usenti just recolors everything that shares the same color value, which is really nice. So we're going to pipette this. It says red 20, green 21, and blue 23. That's 20, 20, 21, and 23. Then we're going to recolor this one, the second one. And this is just really straightforward and simple. You just gotta recolor every single bit of the palette. Now this color, we don't actually have a third gray color in our palette. That means we should improvise. Let's see, this is 13, 14, 17. Let's lower that by, let's lower all those numbers by 3. So that would be 10, 11, and 14. So let's go back. Let's see, 10, 11, 14. Boom. Now we have a gray mace palette. So we have made a palette for mace. I'm not going to change the hatchet. You could do that. You could change the hatchet from, you could change the hatchet and stuff. Just fiddle around with the palette and see what you can and can't change. So now we have created the palette. Let's save that. And then we're going to import it into FEBuilder. So let's get rid of all this Usenti. We're now back at the main screen, but let's go back to the palette menu. Close this window real quick, and also get to this window. So now we have created a palette. We only need to import it into FEBuilder. That's the only thing that's left for us to do. Let's import it. Let's see where I left it. There you go. Now we have imported the palette, but you might think like, oh no, I don't see anything. That is because we haven't linked the palette to an animation or character yet. So let's go back to this menu right here. And we have not set a palette for the trainee class yet. Well, we just click on that. We click on the trainee 0 thing, and then we double click on 6D, the new palette we made, and boom. Oh, nothing happened. That's funny. We'll just fill in 6D over here. As you can see, the colors of the journeyman change. That is good. That means that the palette is connected. The palette has been found. The game has linked the palette to this animation. Let's write to ROM. And let's boot up Fire Emblem Game Boy Advance real quick. So let me do that real quick. Let's quickly look at that. Let's boot up the ROM. And let's see if we can find it. That would be awesome. There you go. So, hold on. There you go. That is the ROM. Let's quickly speed everything up. And let's restart chapter 2. Since we've replaced Ross, we have to play the chapter where he first appears in. And that would be this chapter. So we're quickly going to skip all of this. We're going to rescue Ross. And then we have to wait a turn. Just because of the or like the movement of Vanessa doesn't allow us to get Ross to take Ross out of the rescue position. So now everything's going to battle, blah 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 blah. Not really interesting. So we're going to drop Ross over here. Quickly recruit him. Or Mace, actually. Hello, Mace. Nice to see that your portrait works. Now comes the test when healing palettes should be displayed as well. And there you go. Mace has a palette. He's gray now instead of blue. Which is nice. So that means that we have actually made a portrait for Mace. And that is good, seeing as we now have a portrait made for this character. Now, as I said, you could also create portraits for generic enemies. If we quickly go... Where's the palette menu? We're over here. If you go to, like, the cutthroat, because that's the enemies... Just type it in. Yeah. Look, there's no palette set over here. If we wanted to turn the cutthroats into Risen, then we'll go to this. We click on base class. And then quickly... hold on, where is it? I'm looking for it. No, that's not it. Let's see. Not this one. Wait, where is it? Let's just let's just look. Oh crap. Alright, let's just go to the setting palettes place. Not this one. Alright, so now we're going to set a palette for a generic enemy. Let's go to the extend list option again and set this to 110. So when we're looking at generic enemies, creating portraits for generic enemies is quite a tricky thing to do, seeing as when we go back, let me go back to this window real quick. There are only 7. There are only 7 slots for palettes. That means that you can only assign 7 palettes to an enemy, which means that if you would like to give different armies different palettes, you have to keep in mind that you can only set 7 palettes for a unit. And so, if you wanted to make like all sorts of different classes for enemies, you need to remember which palette corresponds with an enemy with a certain class. It's a little bit hard to explain. Let's say we wanted to change this cutthroat into, if we want to give the cutthroats unique palettes, then we should keep in mind that we can only set 7. So we could set one for a lord, for Lord number 2, for Lord number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, for these classes. So we can only set so much palettes. If you want to set palettes for more classes, you actually need to go to a different character that then also is named Cutthroat and go on with the list of classes. So if you want to give enemies different palettes and keep the original ones as well, you have to keep in mind that you can only set 7 unique ones, and you have to create new palettes. For every character you need to create new palettes. So like this cutthroat can only cover 7 classes. If you have the class number 8, then you have to go to the second. You have to plan that. For now though, we're only going to focus on the Brigand class, because I have made a palette for that. So we can give all the generic cutthroat brigands a custom palette, which I did for a small hack project. I created a Risen portrait. So now we have this, we have the Brigand class set. We go to the palette editor window again, which is this one, and we import the Brigand palette, the Risen Brigand palette. Let's see if I can find it. That would be nice. Alright, there you go. What? Oh, we need to allocate the palette area first. Remember to do that, otherwise FEBuilder will give you an error. We've done that now, and boom, we have imported the palette. You can't see it yet. And then we go back to, where is it? This window, and we set it to 6E. Now we have created the Risen Brigand palette. I want to cover one more thing in this little menu. We can quickly take a look at that. Hold up. There you go. There is one thing that I still have to cover about this, or 2 things actually to have to cover about this. The first one is the identifier. This is not really important for the game itself, but it allows you to recognize who the palette belongs to. So if we change these numbers, we can actually change the letters up here. So we're going to change this to BRI, so we know that it's a Brigand palette. Let's see, there you go. It's now BRI, so we know that it's the palette of the Risen Brigand. And then you can actually view the palette over here, like, oh cool, we have palettes for every single character, but I have ticked this little box, and this little box will make it so that all the players, or all the players, but let me start that sentence, let me restart that sentence, because as we saw with the generic palette for the Journeyman had a blue palette, a red one, a green one, and a gray one. This is because there are 4 types of armies in Fire Emblem Game Boy Advanced. The blue one, which is yours, the red one, which is the enemy, the green one, which is the neutral and / NPC, and the gray one is only used in arena battles. You can actually import, or you can actually change these colors, and you can view how they would look like in a different color. But I've ticked this box. That means that no matter if the character with this palette is a player, enemy, NPC, or a gray unit, they will always have this palette. So they will always have a red pants and will always look purple. For every standard FE8 palette, they have a sort of red color scheme when they're an enemy, and when you recruit them, they will turn a little bit more blue. I chose not to do that in my ROM hack, just because that makes stuff a little bit more simple, but that is all there is to it. I'd like to tick this box. You can choose not to do so. But yeah, now we have created a palette for a generic Brigand. Now, if we go back to the ROM real quick, let's go back to our little ROM, because we need to test if it works, right? We need to test if our palette for the generic Brigand works. So we're going to resume chapter, because palettes always change. You don't have to restart chapters for that. So let's use our overpowered Seth to summon a phantom and check if the palette works. Let's see. Oh wait, phantoms don't have battle animations. How could I be so stupid? Let's just test with Franz then. There you go. And as you can see, there's a risen palette set for a generic enemy. Now all generic cutthroats, so all generic cutthroat brigands will have this palette. So on this map there's a total of, like, what is it? There are like brigands, there's a brigand, all kinds of brigands and archers. The thing with the archers is... was that really necessary, getting a 3% crit? But all the brigands have this risen palette, and if I wanted to change the archer, and you also have like a mercenary, or you have a thief, if I want to set palettes for all those classes, I have to be careful with the limit of 7 different color palettes. So that's that. We have set a palette for our character Mace over here. He has a gray palette now. And we have set a different palette for the generic brigands. If there's anything you want to ask me, do that in the comments section. If anything's unclear, tell me. I might fix it in a later episode. If there's anything you still want to know, or something you want me to do, let's say, for an example, you're busy with event editing and you do not know how to do certain stuff, leave suggestions for the next episodes in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more of these tutorials, and leave a thumbs up so I know that you guys actually find these things helpful. And that's actually that. We've created unit palettes, and I've also shown you how to do it. My name is XPGamesNL, and I hope to see you back when we go cover a different topic in FEBuilder. Goodbye.